The White Sox owner actually laughed at the idea of potentially signing a generational talent like Shohei Ohtani. Well, hopefully when Justin Ishbia takes over control of the team, he doesn't laugh at such ideas.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan. I've been podcasting here for over a year and a half and covering the team well before then. And also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, watching Shohei Ohtani put on one of the greatest individual performances in postseason history brought up some memories of White Sox owner Jerry Reinsdorf laughing at the idea of the team pursuing him in free agency. And I want to discuss hopefully Justin Ishbia will never feel that way when he buys controlling interest. Then I want to throw out a hypothetical when it comes to Paul Konerko. And finally, let's discuss how the White Sox prospects did in Week 2 of the Arizona Fall League during this week's Minor League Monday Report. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So when Justin Ishbia takes over as the White Sox owner in 2029, and gosh, I hope it's 2029, I don't know if we can all handle waiting till like, say, 2034, and maybe it's even sooner. Hopefully, maybe, if something happens to Jerry, I mean, heaven forbid, you don't want to wish a man to die, but if something does befall on him, maybe the heirs decide to sell the Ishbia sooner. Either way, Justin Ishbia hopefully takes control of the team at some point. My hope is he doesn't laugh at the idea of paying the going rate to sign generational talent on the rare occasions they hit the free agent market. Because remember, Jerry Reinsdorf actually said this in 2023, and this is from SoxMachine.com. Quote, "Look, we're not going to be in the Ohtani race. I'll tell you that right now. I'll tell you that." End quote. And then he chuckled. An owner actually laughed at the idea of not pursuing this generation's Babe Ruth. He laughed at it. He laughed at the notion that the White Sox would be in the race to try to get one of the best players in baseball. And potentially, the case he's making, one of the best players in baseball history. So my hope is Justin has enough common sense that generational talents rarely become free agents, especially in their prime. And when they are available, you don't laugh at the idea of even just picking up the phone. Because while I was in awe of what Ohtani did last Friday by hitting 3 home runs and then striking out 10 to eliminate the Brewers, I went to a place that thought my favorite team's owner laughed at the notion of Ohtani coming to the South Side. Now, I doubt it was because he was being realistic, that Ohtani was just never going to come. I actually highly doubt that Jerry Reinsdorf was just kind of laughing it away, kind of a nervous tick, like, I know if I pick up the phone, if I had Getz pick up the phone, he's going to say, his representation's going to say no way. No, came down to cost. He knew how much it was going to cost to sign Shohei Ohtani, and that's why he laughed at it. He was not ever going to even consider the notion of signing a player for that much money, $720 million. Although, what is it? I think like 690 of it was deferred. And look, I doubt Ohtani was ever going to go to Chicago in the offseason heading into the 2024 season. And that goes for either side of the city. I mean, it seemed pretty clear he wanted to sign with the Dodgers and was just using Toronto as leverage to get as much money as he could from LA. And it turns out as much money as he could deferred from LA. But you still at least pick up the phone. Don't commit organizational negligence. You call the agent and you have his representation say no. Because who knows? Maybe his party even says, hey, you want me to come to the White Sox or even on the Cubs side? It's going to cost you $1 billion. Then I would consider paying him $1 billion. Hot take, I know, but again, there are reports out there that the Dodgers have already made back the $720 million they agreed to pay Ohtani, with most of it being deferred, because the guy's not only a talent, he's an attraction. He puts butts in seats wherever he goes in a sport where that's becoming rare these days. Actual attraction players are becoming rare. Guys that come to come to the city and you're like, I got to go see that guy play. I don't care if it's at Wrigley. I'm going to go see that guy play. Or again, the Cubs fans, I don't care if it's at Rate Field. I'm going to go see that guy play, or driving up to Milwaukee to see these talents. That's what Shohei Ohtani is. And Jerry laughed at even picking up the phone to maybe have a player that could give him maybe that tiny morsel of leverage for a new stadium, mostly funded by taxpayer money. Team was nowhere near the race for Juan Soto. Team didn't even want to pay the extra $50 million it would have taken guaranteed to get Manny Machado. Didn't even really make a serious offer to Bryce Harper. So while we do have to wait 3 years and it feels like an eternity, the hope is when Justin Ishbia takes over, he's willing to use that deep pocketbook he has to pursue generational or premium talent whenever it becomes available, whether it's through trades or free agency. Go get those players when they become available. Now, the caveat is we don't know what CBA rules Ishbia will have to play by. I get that. But I do know, and this is just for example purposes, as I'm well aware, the White Sox are covered at these respective positions when it comes to players that I'm about to list. But next offseason, the Sox will likely not be in the bidding for Tariq Skubal. Whenever we get to free agency, obviously. They won't be in on Wilson Contreras, Adley Rutschman, Stephen Kwan, Joe Ryan, or Jeremy Pena after the likely abbreviated 2027 season. Because I do think we're going to get an abbreviated 2027 season. And don't hold your breath for the White Sox to be in the running to sign Gunnar Henderson, Riley Green, or Yordan Alvarez when they're potentially free agents after the 2028 season. And again, I get free agency sometimes can be a quick way to actually throw bad money on the books. But at the same time, if there's a super motivated superstar to just be great, that's one of their biggest driving forces is they want to be great. And it's on the and they're on the market. You should be moving heaven and earth to get that player, regardless of whether you're covered at the position or not. You got to keep bringing great talent in. And that's why my hope is when Ishbia completes the closing on purchasing full control, he's committed to that notion, whether it's through the draft, draft me greatness, whether it's through international free agent signings, get greatness, whether it's, again, a generational talent somehow available or a superstar talent somehow available in their prime years too on the free agent market, you go and sign that player. Or again, if they become available on the trade market, you have a good prospect system that you can trade for that player. Because again, everybody's just going crazy about the Dodgers right now and all the money they're spending, but everybody forgets too, the Dodgers keep focusing on that to be able to acquire those great players, and then they use free agency to continue to get great players. And that's one of the things I would love to see when Justin Ishbia takes over, but man, feels like an eternity it's going to be. Well, Paul Konerko is one of those players that the organization once brought in and helped salvage his career that turned out to be iconic. And I got a question to pose about how long he would have stayed on the South Side had he asked for more money than he earned, and that is coming up after the break. There's nothing like catching a baseball game live, the energy, the crowd, the chance to see your team in person, but actually getting tickets, that's the tough part. Queues, login screens, surprise fees, it takes all the fun out of it. And that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So the price you see is the price you pay. Think about it. Fees are included. You're going to know your total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Now, how many times have you thought, hey, I am getting a great deal to go to this show, to go to this sporting event, only to get to the checkout and then see that deal vanish under a pile of fees? Well, that doesn't happen at Game Time. Honestly, Game Time is faster, cheaper, and the less stressful way than I've ever bought tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, you can get the audio version of the show on places such as Apple or Spotify. So make sure to follow or subscribe it wherever you get your podcasts. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me, and maybe some hope. And also make sure to check out my written content at SouthsideSox.com and on TapSportsNet.com. All right, so I know tomorrow is when I address your questions and comments on Talk You Off Tuesday. And again, make sure to send your questions and comments to lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com, or you can send them to @LockedOnSox on Twitter, on X, formerly Twitter. But listener Jim Shanahan Jr. 669, he left a comment on Thursday's episode where I went over, I remember on Thursday's episode, I went over Jerry's unwillingness to hand out $100 million contracts to keep the premium talent that the White Sox actually do develop. And from time to time, got to remember, even though they've earned every ounce of scrutiny, this organization has developed some premium talent from time to time. It happens. But he said, well, shouldn't we be counting the career salary of $130 million that Paul Konerko earned with the White Sox? Well, as I responded, no, because that was accumulated over a long career. And Paulie given the team some hometown discounts. And remember that 2011 deal where he signed for 3 years, $37 million, so the team could add Adam Dunn as well? Because remember, we were all thinking, they signed Adam Dunn, Paulie's gone. And then he comes back at 3 years, $37 million when he was still relatively productive. And also, I responded with this. Would Paul Konerko still be with the White Sox after the 2005 World Series and he asked for more than 5 years, $60 million? Think about that. Would he still be basically a career White Sox player? I mean, obviously he did start with the Dodgers and went to the Reds and then was brought over in the swapped with Mike Cameron, and the White Sox actually salvaged his career, one of the few careers that, they were able to salvage. Comes a free agent after the 2005 World Series, and he does return on a 5-year, $60 million deal. Would he be with the White Sox after 2005, though, had he asked for a larger sum? Or if they, wouldn't budge off of that? I doubt it. And that's my whole point that I made on Thursday, where I've been fielding some comments from people that I don't know if they're Jerry defenders. I don't know if they're Jerry burners. I don't know. I doubt. I mean, if Jerry really focuses on a podcast like this, I would say we got some bigger problems. But and again, I do try to be as fair to this organization as I can. I've given them their flowers when they need to be given their flowers. I've said, for example, the people that need to be out in front should be out in front, and Jerry needs to be in the back. But my whole point is we've been watching talent leave this organization in part because the owner isn't willing to pay the going rate for premium talent. And it's no longer 5 years, $60 million. It's around $100 million. And also to say, well, I don't know if Paulie would have ever requested $100 million. Remember, $100 million deals were a thing 2 decades ago, and they were usually, but they were normally reserved for all-star talent. And think about this. Carlos Lee got 6 years and $100 million from Houston in the offseason heading into the 2007 season. And you can say, well, Carlos must have accomplished more. No. Paulie had 2 more all-star appearances before his 2000, potential walk year, while Lee had 1. And Paulie hit more home runs during his potential walk season, than Carlos Lee had. Remember, Carlos Lee was never an all-star with the White Sox. Paulie made 2 all-star teams. Actually, Paulie made 1 before they traded away Carlos Lee. And you can say, well, Konerko played first base. Well, 2 decades ago, first base was still considered a premium position. Remember, corner infielders. Corner players were the ones that were hitting all the power, and power was still the rage, and it still is. But, first base was a premium position at the time. It was a star position, and Paul Konerko was a star. And while I appreciate the loyalty Paulie had to the South Side, would it have been 2 ways had he asked for more money? And I think that's a fair question. And again, I think that's the point that even the hardcore even the hardcore pro Jerry have just got to understand. It's been this issue where the loyalty is to a certain extent of money. And I get it's business. But if it isn't a team-friendly deal, these guys are getting traded away. They're getting moved away. And you could say, well, the White Sox don't need an ace right now because, they're rebuilding. Okay, I get it. And trust me, the return for Garrett Crochet was amazing, but you could have also built a stellar rotation around Garrett Crochet and been competitive still by probably 2028. All the Garrett Crochet deal did was, yes, it accelerated the timeline, hopefully by a season or two, probably a season. But it's really hard to tell if Paul Konerko said, hey, I want 70, I want 80 million. If the White Sox would have said, okay, let's do it. And it's really hard to tell because it feels like once a player asks for a certain price or indicates they would like to test the market, out that player goes. And that was the whole point of doing that show on Thursday, was to indicate the White Sox have basically become a farm system for contenders, in part because of the unwillingness to retain the talent unless it's on their terms, which is usually team-friendly and cheap. And sometimes you have to swallow your pride and realize to keep premium talent, you got to pay the going rate. That's why, we have this, I keep seeing this debate. Well, should they extend Colson first? Should they extend Kyle Teal first? Are they going to extend either one of them? Because again, I talked about it. Fangraphs has outlined Colson Montgomery's 21 home runs in 71 games was worth like $21.4 million technically when you convert production to value. Do you see this current ownership giving Colson Montgomery basically $100 million deal if you want to buy out his arb years and have some club control after that? Do you think Kyle Teal is going to settle for anything less than what Samuel Basallo got, $67 million? And he played less games in the majors that the Orioles gave him? And not every player is going to give a hometown discount, because why? There's no reason. I'm thankful that Paulie gave the White Sox those discounts. I really am. I'm glad he was basically Mr. White Sox. But, and you could say, well, it's he wasn't as greedy. Okay, and I get that, but it's not being greedy because there's no salary cap right now. And maybe there will be one in the next CBA. I doubt it, because I still think the players' union is still strong enough to survive a lengthy labor battle, especially if they get locked out. If they get locked out, you can't put that all on the players then. It's the owners trying to starve them out. This isn't like 94 when the players did walk off the game. Then you could say, oh, it's the greedy players. You could have blamed them a little bit more. This will be them being locked out, not being able to do their jobs. But I think they're able to survive a lengthy battle. And also, if they follow what the NFL Players Union did and the NHL Players Union did last decade, you briefly dissolve the union, you sue, and if you get at least one favorable ruling on an injunction temporary, even if it gets overruled on an appeal, that usually forces the owner's hands. And my prediction is a salary floor will be implemented with maybe a lower luxury tax threshold, and maybe you get a punitive tier like they have in the NBA, which the Dodgers will probably still pay until that local TV deal runs out, because until here's the other issue, until the owners actually pool their local TV revenue together, they have no real leverage on the players. All they can tell them is the RSNs are dying, so the pie is shrinking, but they can still say, hey, there's still some teams making lots of money. We'll just go sign with those guys because they're willing to spend the money. So with no salary cap, there's no reason to ask players to take a hometown discount unless you are operating under a self-imposed salary cap. And that has been my problem with Jerry Reinsdorf since 2021. He keeps putting a self-imposed salary cap on this team when he doesn't have to. And to the people out there that say, well, the team doesn't draw enough, the gate is not supposed to stay in a player's payroll. It's the TV revenue, the shared MLB revenue, the corporate suites, and the sponsorships to sustain it. And the Sox made $277 million in revenue in 2024, and they only put 31.6 of it back into the 2025 payroll. Well, it's Monday, and that means a minor league Monday report. Let's go over how the White Sox prospects did in the Arizona Fall League during week 2 of game action after the break. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet. put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel gives you so many ways to play. You can build parlays. You can try the player props. You can even follow the live lines during the games. FanDuel makes watching football even more exciting when you got a little something riding on the action. And I've always been saying FanDuel's traditional money lines, the over-unders, and the spreads are fun to play. But if you want to win big money or at least double or triple your cash, play the parlays, props, or futures. Right now, FanDuel is offering a same-game parlay for tonight's Tampa at Detroit game featuring Mike Evans, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon St. Brown, David Montgomery, and Rashid White, all scoring an anytime touchdown. It's at plus 26.48, and if you put, say, as little as $10 down on it, and somehow it hits, you can win $264.80. So, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox or the other podcasts, as this show's available on all major podcast platforms. Hope you had a good weekend. I enjoyed mine. Watch the Bears win. It's a fun one. Well, anyways, Hagen Smith had a stellar outing last week in the Arizona Fall League, and that is a nice way to boost the confidence that he can still be a great starter in the show after an inconsistent injury-plagued season at Double-A. Caden, he's leading the Desert Dogs in OPS, and the Paul DeJong trade isn't looking so good, but honestly, I don't care if Gerald Rosado is struggling in the AFL. Those are the three things I actually want to focus on this week's Minor League Monday report. So Smith had another 3 innings of scoreless ball. Pitched on the 17th, struck out 5, allowed 1 hit and walked 2, and again, he's keeping runs off the board. And allowing 3 base runners is huge in his Arizona Fall League start, because that's where hitting usually outshines the pitching. It's pretty much a hitter's paradise down, in Phoenix right now. And let's hope he can keep this up during the rest of the AFL and finish strong, because that would be a huge confidence boost. And he was listed as one of MLB.com's top performers of Week 2, according to Joe Trezza. And Caden, he's leading the Desert Dogs in OPS with a 941 number. He's got a 541 on-base percentage and 11 walks. Now, not a ton of power being on display for Connor in the AFL. He just has 1 double and no home runs, but he is hitting 360. And he's basically the only one that's performing right now of the 3 hitters that the White Sox have with the Desert Dogs right now. Sam Antonaci has a 720 OPS and is hitting 226. Kind of had a rough week after getting off to a solid start during Week 1. And then Scott Merkin of MLB.com, the White Sox beat reporter, he's got a cool story about Ryan Galaney, about him driving around in his RV and all that stuff. And it's a pretty neat story. I suggest you check it out. But he's got a 519 OPS right now. So, your 2 potential maybe first base options long term, not really showing out much. One of them is showing out. The other, Caden, he's showing out. He's been very impressive. Well, Galaney, he's a little bit further along. You got to hope that he can kind of maybe make a little bit more of an impression. And again, these are more, you're showcasing guys for potential trades. You're just trying to get them more work because they missed time for injuries. Maybe you want them to work on something. Maybe, they're Rule 5 eligible and you just want to get one more determination before, are you going to put them on the 40-man? So you don't want to get too high. You don't want to get too low. But again, with Smith, it's kind of nice that he is showing out, because at least it can be like, okay, maybe it was the arm fatigue. Maybe it was just, again, a first year of just pitching more often. Because again, usually in college, you only start once a week. You may sometimes come out of the bullpen, but even then you're pitching more innings and that. So, it's just about building his arm up. But then there's Gerald Rosado, the reliever acquired in the Paul DeJong deal last year. And, well, he's getting hit. He has an 18 ERA in 3 outings, including allowing a home run. Now, should you be worried about a player who struggled at Double-A and then was demoted to Single-A this season? Honestly, no. And why? He was a bonus player. I mean, yeah, he achieved. He was part of one objective being achieved. The hope was DeJong would yield something at the trade deadline in 2024. But it wasn't going to be like some timeline accelerating prospect. It was always going to be a scratch-off hitting prospect or a pitcher with a reliever profile. Because if you were expecting Paul DeJong to land that rebuild timeline accelerating prospect, then I don't know what to tell you. Honestly. And that's why, like, I've seen a couple pieces out there like, oh, he's not doing much. Well, he wasn't even supposed to be here. The White Sox weren't his original franchise. They never sunk anything into him. They gave up Paul DeJong. I mean, just getting something from Paul DeJong is an accomplishment. And Rosado did pitch much better in single A, so maybe he is a victim of the hitting environment of the Arizona Fall League. And if he does somehow make it to the show, great. If not, well, he wasn't supposed to be in the organization in the first place. Again, the White Sox didn't sign him in international free agency. The Royals did. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On MLB Game Night, every game, every night until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or listen to your podcast. And I'll be back tomorrow with your mailbag questions and comments. So make sure to submit those to lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com or leave them at X, formerly Twitter, at Locked On White Sox or at Todd J. Dub. And again, feel free to leave comments about today's discussion on the episode page on YouTube. Also, make sure to like today's episode on YouTube and leave a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. And also subscribe to the YouTube channel or subscribe it wherever you get your podcast. Have a great day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.